Good morning and welcome to a coffee chat. I'm going to talk about international education and the links to climate change and a just social transition. Some people don't necessarily understand how those things are linked. So I wanted to take some time this morning, grab your coffee, and we'll just chat about it. First and foremost, most people know that we're in a climate crisis. I should introduce who I am. I'm Dr. Jennie Moore, and I'm the Director of Institute Sustainability at the British Columbia Institute of Technology. Before joining BCIT, I was Metro Vancouver's first air quality planner in charge of climate action. That was back in the 1990s, a time when we were talking about the co-benefits of taking climate action as part of a solution to address common air quality concerns. Today, the priorities have flipped. We have pretty good clean air in our region, but we're really struggling with climate. And although Vancouver is often internationally recognized as a climate leader, we're still far above where we need to be in order to be sustainable. So the climate crisis or climate challenge is something that is happening around the world, and air travel is contributing to that. Now, there's ways that we can solve for the environmental impacts of air travel. That's not really the primary issue of concern about what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about is the deeper systems that are driving unsustainability globally. Climate change is just the tip of an iceberg of what's coming for us in terms of issues around resource scarcity, food insecurity, access to water. And although technology is helping us solve a lot of these challenges, we live in an economic global situation where the savings from energy efficiency are simply being plowed back into more consumption. We have a growing global population, aspirations for increasing wealth and affluence, and that's fine. But simultaneously, there's a challenge. Most of the wealth that's being generated in the world is flowing up instead of trickling down. Some is trickling down, but approximately $7 flow up for every one that trickles down, and that what's trickling down only gets to around the middle class, if you will. And the bottom billion still stay the bottom billion. Now, how is any of this linked to international education? That's what I'm hoping to unpack a little bit more today. When we think about international education, there's so many benefits from living in a global culture to experiencing and learning about how other people live, making connections around the world. It contributes to things like global stability. It helps us understand and appreciate that differences are part of what makes life fun, and learning how to live with each other and think in different ways, be culturally appreciative of different narratives of how the world works are all helpful to young people as they start their careers. These are all benefits of international education. A challenge, though, is that those benefits are often available to an elite few, the people who can afford to pay double tuition, who can afford to travel to come to a different country like Canada and afford to pay for all their living expenses. In our public sector education, we have increasingly declined the amount of public sector funding going to education, and we're substituting that with increasing international revenues. So many of us have to secure those revenues as part of the operating program for our institutions. But if all of that is being targeted to high net worth individuals coming from privileged backgrounds, in effect, international education runs the risk of continuing to perpetuate the structural inequalities in the world today, where a majority of people are struggling to make ends meet, who are looking at the impacts of climate change and being affected disproportionately against the minority of people who are benefiting disproportionately from vast economic wealth that's continuing to grow and grow and grow. And these groups are the ones that are also benefiting from the international education opportunities that most of us have on offer in our institutions. So when I look at sustainability as an Institute Director of Sustainability at BCIT, I understand that the relationship is not just about protecting the environment. It's also about advancing social justice and a just transition. In fact, in the 1980s and 1987, when the Brundtland Commission reported on our common future, their focus was on how we could approach a development trajectory that enabled the poor and even the middle income in current generations to improve their lot in life without forfeiting future generations' options to have the same. This is where the term sustainable development was coined. It marries environmental protection with a social justice agenda. One without the other is not sustainability. Just looking at the environment is environmentalism. And I don't want to denigrate that, it's important. Just looking at the social issues are also important. In fact, I argue that if you look at the way our systems work today, globally and politically, if all we did was focus on social justice, we probably solve our environmental problems much faster, because we'd have to reconcile sooner to the fact that many people today are facing diminishing prospects for their future in a global world where most resources are appropriated by a small minority of the wealthy. Let me explain it slightly differently. In the last 10 years, when we look at who owns global wealth, it's increased from 0.8 to 0.9 out of a total of 1, where 1 is absolute disequity. One person owns 100% of the global wealth. So when we're at 0.9, that means that 10% of the global population owns 90% of the global wealth. And the remaining 90% of the global population is left to divide 10% of global wealth. And so it's really not a suitable situation for humanity if humaneness, where we value consideration for others and we value the fair distribution of benefits and costs for everyone, is a priority. So how do we reconcile ourselves in international education to make sure that we're doing a better job of offering education to more people, including the people who can't financially afford to take advantage of it, but who could contribute a lot and deserve access to education, and from whom we'd all benefit if we had those opportunities to socially interact and learn and share with each other? I think that COVID has given us some insights into ways that we can continue to move forward with international global connections, offering education to not only the wealthy and privileged, but to other people as well. Not everyone has access to a computer. Not everyone has the bandwidth necessary to participate in online education, but more people have access to those things than have access to flying and traveling. I don't want to take away from the fun and the benefits of travel. I also think there are solutions coming to help make air travel less environmentally impacting, but it is a problem as well. I do think what we need is an and situation where we're simultaneously looking at ways to expand the reach and access of international education to a much broader group of people, to find ways to generate revenues within our institutions that are not only focused on the elite, but actually begin to make a positive social contribution to participating countries through access using the virtual technologies as well. I'm happy that today, in today's world, we have so much access to technology. We're understanding the deeper issues more and more. There's good alignment and synergies with other social initiatives and economic initiatives and environmental initiatives. These things do go hand in hand. We are in a privileged place in the world of international education to make these connections between climate action and a socially just transition, to broaden the spectrum of who has access to education through international education endeavors. I hope this coffee chat has opened a few thoughts, maybe sparked some conversations. Enjoy the morning. Cheers.